This isn't just a defeat in a civil case. This is Harry being exposed as not telling the truth under oath in the King's Court.
Tom Bower has finally revealed the real reason Meghan Markle was reportedly forced away from the Invictus Games. And it is not the polite excuse the palace-friendly press keeps repeating. This was her stage, the one event where the cameras always found her first, where the smiling Duchess image was rebuilt year after year. Then, behind closed doors, something changed, and the woman who owned that spotlight was reportedly pushed out of it completely.
Enough of this bullshit. Just strip them of the titles, Meghan and Harry. Stop the drama, the circus that applies to them everywhere they go.
What Bower uncovered involves missing millions, blacked out documents, and insiders who finally broke their silence. Once you hear his explanation, you will never see this couple the same way again. The empty stage. Start with what is missing. Meghan Markle should have been there. She would normally have been there, front and center, hand in hand with Harry, gliding through the crowd, while every lens in the building found her first. And yet, the reports now circulating say she is being kept at arm's length from Invictus going forward, effectively maneuvered off the stage she once owned. To understand why that absence matters, you need the numbers underneath it. The most recent games, held in Vancouver and Whistler in February 2025, brought together 543 wounded military veterans from 23 countries, and the total cost came to 63.2 million Canadian dollars. That works out to roughly $118,000 per competitor for one 10-day event. And in that exact same year, the grants meant for the wounded veterans this whole thing was built for were reportedly slashed by 63%. Sit those two facts side by side. A 9-figure spectacle in Canadian dollars per athlete, and the actual support for the wounded, gutted in the same 12 months. Now, put Meghan back into the frame. According to Tom Bower, the veteran investigative author, who has studied this couple longer and closer than almost anyone alive, Invictus effectively became her event. Whether it was Vancouver, or Dusseldorf, or The Hague, that was where she could star, where she could revive the golden image of the smiling Duchess. Every appearance produced the same reliable cycle: the arrival footage, the carefully timed embrace, the glowing coverage that ran for days. For a couple whose commercial ventures were reportedly struggling, Invictus was the one machine that still manufactured good press on demand. So, when she vanished from it, people assumed a scheduling story, a polite absence, a quiet step back. That is the version being offered in the friendlier corners of the press, and it is the version that falls apart the moment you look at what has been happening behind the curtain over the past year. Bower says it is nothing of the sort, because behind that absence sits a growing scandal involving Prince Harry's last remaining genuine charity project, and a name Bower attached to these games that, once you hear it, snaps everything into focus. The Meghan Games. For years, nobody with a serious platform dared say it in public. Then Bower put it in black and white. He reportedly refused to call the Vancouver Invictus Games by their official name at all. He called them the Meghan Games. According to Bower, the timeline explains the label. After the couple's massive Netflix deal underperformed, after the money did not come flooding in the way they had counted on, Harry reportedly agreed that Meghan could star at Invictus. Think about what that actually means. An event built for men and women who came home from war with pieces of themselves left behind on the battlefield, reportedly repurposed into a stage to rescue a slipping celebrity image. The games Harry founded to honor the wounded, quietly turned into a rescue vehicle for his wife's brand. Once you know that, you cannot unsee it. Go back and watch Vancouver, watch Dusseldorf, watch every stop on the tour, watch where the cameras drift and who ends up front and center in every single frame. Notice how the coverage builds toward her arrival, how the crowd shots orbit around her, how the athletes become set dressing in their own competition. Bower's entire argument is that these games stopped being about the soldiers the moment she decided they were about her. The heroes slid into the background. She became the headline every time. And this is not just Bower talking into the wind. 2 Canadian Invictus executives, people who were actually inside the machine and saw how it worked day to day, were reportedly forced out. Bower writes that they deeply resented what he described as the pushy Sussexes. And one of those insiders reportedly summed up Meghan's presence at the games in 3 words so brutal that I am going to save them for exactly the moment in this story where they belong. Because you need to see the money first. Because the money is where the whole polished picture starts to rot. $63 million. That is what Vancouver cost for roughly 500 competitors across about 10 days. And to grasp how staggering that is, you need the comparisons. The US Warrior Games, the American event Invictus was directly modeled on, runs on roughly $2 million a year. Germany stages its own wounded veterans competition for about $200,000. The previous games in Dusseldorf reportedly cost around $40 million, and the field has always been about the same size. Same event, same rough 500 athletes. The bill exploded anyway. And who covered it? You did, if you pay taxes in Canada. According to tax filings, the public picked up half the tab, with the Canadian federal government contributing $15 million through Veterans Affairs Canada, and the province of British Columbia contributing another $15 million through its Ministry of Tourism, Arts, and Sport. $30 million of public money flowing into an event whose own paperwork, as you are about to see, cannot fully explain where it went. So the obvious question hangs in the air. Where did it all go? Before we follow the money, do one quick thing for me right now. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the numbers you are about to see are the ones almost nobody else will walk you through line by line. And stories like this vanish from the headlines far faster than they should. You do not want to miss what comes next. Following the money. This is where a woman named Rachel enters the story, a former finance professional turned airline pilot, someone who tracked numbers for a living before she ever sat in a cockpit. She sat down and tried to trace every last dollar, line by line, using nothing but Invictus's own published paperwork. Rooms, catering, buses, airfare, staffing, executive salaries, all of it. And she was deliberately generous the entire way through. Nice hotels at full nightly rates. No cutting corners just to score a point against anyone. She priced the accommodation, she priced the ceremonies and the venues and the flights. She even allowed for taxes and overhead on top of every category, stacking the deck in the organizer's favor at every single step, because she wanted the numbers to survive scrutiny from anyone who checked her work. She got to about 13, maybe 14 million, and then she slammed into that wall, millions upon millions with nothing left to pin them to. She joked that she must be terrible at math, because no matter how many times she ran the numbers, she could not find where the rest of the money went. Then, look at the official breakdown, and the strangeness only deepens. Roughly $11 million listed for workforce and staffing at an event where the organizers themselves boasted that 90% of the workforce were volunteers giving their time for free. Another $10.7 million for accommodation and catering at an event where competitors reportedly had to cover their own travel and their own equipment. $11 million in staffing costs next to 90% volunteers. Try to make those two facts agree. She could not. So she did what any trained finance professional would do. She went looking for the one official document that should have explained everything. And what she found there is where confusion curdles into something much darker. The redacted pages. She found the official Canadian government budget document, and it was redacted, blacked out, page after page after page, an entire budget appendix on a government document about a charity event wiped clean. She described getting genuinely excited when she finally reached the budget page, only to find the whole thing hidden behind black bars. Even the contribution agreement between the province of British Columbia and the Vancouver Whistler Games Corporation, the legal document governing tens of millions in public money, contained redactions around costs, expenses, fees, and payments. A government document about a veterans charity, and the public is not allowed to see where the public's money went. What happened? Next tells you even more than the redactions do. When she published that blacked-out document and urged her followers to pressure the government for the real figures, the Invictus Canada website reportedly went dark. Not a week later. Not the next morning. When it came back online, the document had vanished, and the site had been rebuilt so that you now needed a registered account just to download anything, meaning they could see exactly who was digging. 3 hours. That is how fast they moved. Ask yourself one honest question. Why would a charity for wounded veterans react like that? A transparent organization publishes its numbers proudly. It does not black out budget pages. It does not pull documents offline within hours of scrutiny. It does not put its paperwork behind a login wall so it can watch who is reading. But none of it, not the blacked out pages, not the vanishing website, lands as hard as what comes next. Because the next set of numbers does not come from a tabloid or a gossip channel. It comes straight from the charity's own accounts, filed with the UK Charity Commission. The charity accounts, the Invictus Games Foundation, the British charity at the center of the entire operation, recently filed its 2024 annual accounts after a 2-year grace period. And according to reporting on those filings, the numbers raise red flag after red flag. In 2024, the foundation cut its direct grants to veteran organizations by 63%. In a single year, from over £530,000 down to just $200,000. Now, hold that next to what happened in the very same year. Income did not fall. It rose by 41%. Reserves did not shrink to cover some painful gap. They reportedly exploded by 430%, growing to around £2.3 million. The foundation created a brand new 6-figure executive role. Its top earner was pulling in more than £120,000, above typical norms for a charity of that size. A job posting for the foundation's head of finance reportedly offered between £130,000 and £150,000 on a 2-year contract, with comprehensive benefits attached. Run the arithmetic on a leadership team paid at that level, and you land in the millions, at an organization that had just gutted its grants to actual veterans by nearly 2/3. The filings hold more surprises. Legal fees nearly tripled from around £45,000 to roughly £155,000, with not a word of explanation. Tripled legal bills at a charity for wounded soldiers, and nobody will say why. Deferred income ballooned 4-fold from £431,000 to nearly £1.8 million. And here is the detail that makes your skin crawl. An American for-profit company that nobody has been able to properly identify, listed in the filings as June's LLC with no description of purpose, received nearly £30,000 from this British veterans charity in 1 year. Then, nothing the next. No stated purpose, no explanation for why the payment started, and none for why they stopped. Money raised in the name of wounded soldiers, flowing to a mystery company on another continent, and the accounts stay silent. The same filing even reportedly carries 2 different company registration numbers, one on the cover page and another on the balance sheet. The foundation publicly claims that 92% of every pound goes toward charitable activities, and technically, that figure falls within Charity Commission guidelines. But look closely at what that phrase is doing, because this is the part most people miss. The term charitable activities includes the cost of running the games themselves, the ceremonies, the production, the spectacle, the venues and the staging and the broadcast. Every dollar spent putting on the show gets counted as charity, whether or not a single wounded veteran ever sees a direct benefit from it. So, a headline figure that sounds generous can sit right on top of grants that were gutted by nearly 2/3. And both statements can be technically true at the same time. That is how a machine like this stays polished on the surface while the people it was built for get less and less underneath. Rachel framed the human cost in a way that stays with you. For a competitor from a country like Nigeria, where the average person survives on roughly $100 a month, the money that got cut represents nearly 2 decades of income. That is prosthetic limbs. That is making a home wheelchair accessible. That is a vehicle a disabled veteran could actually drive. That is what was quietly taken away, while the reserves swelled bigger and bigger. And this exact machine is what Meghan was reportedly told she could star in, which is where this stops being about spreadsheets and turns deeply personal. Bling, not rehabilitation. Because it was not only the missing money that made the veterans uneasy, it was watching her. Dominic Reed, who headed the Invictus Foundation at the time, was reportedly worried, genuinely and seriously worried, that the entire enterprise was collapsing into what he called the Harry and Meghan show. The competitors, the actual wounded warriors, dissolving into the backdrop while the couple soaked up every camera in the building. It reportedly got so bad last year that several soldiers threatened to pull out of the games altogether because they could feel that the spotlight had left them entirely. Stop and picture what that actually looks like. The wounded, the entire reason any of this exists, men and women carrying injuries most of us cannot imagine, were ready to walk away from their own event, because a woman in designer clothes kept stepping in front of them. Observers who attended described audiences essentially arranged around Harry and Meghan to make the event look packed, while in reality, only a handful of people were watching most of the actual competition. The couple would reportedly appear for a few minutes, deliver an adoring photo opportunity, share a stage kiss for the cameras, and move on. And year after year, look at what the headlines were actually about. Never a veteran's impossible comeback. Always how much money Meghan was wearing. By some counts, $250,000 in clothing, paraded in front of men and women who gave their limbs for their countries, and who reportedly had to cover their own travel and equipment just to compete. One commentator posed the question that hangs over all of it. If you ask those competitors what mattered more, a check that could genuinely transform a disabled veteran's life, or a front row seat to a public relations production, what do you honestly think they would say? Now, those 3 words I promised you. One of the ousted Canadian insiders, someone who worked these games from the inside, reportedly described what Meghan brought to Invictus as bling, not rehabilitation. That is not a tabloid columnist talking. That is reportedly a person who stood inside the machine, describing the woman parading in front of wounded veterans. Bauer has a phrase for how he believes these two operate, and it genuinely chills you. He wrote that they love nothing more than wearing the skin of others to serve themselves. They find something pure, something sacred, and they pull it on like a costume. And when Bauer was finally asked, point blank, who was behind all of it, he gave an answer that has echoed everywhere since. Source of evil. He was asked whether Meghan was the cause of it all, the instigator, the influence behind every bit of the wreckage. He did not reach for a soft word. He reportedly answered with a flat, unqualified yes. And then he repeated the most explosive characterization of his entire career, the one that cost him dearly the first time he said it, years ago. He called Meghan a source of evil. He said it once, absorbed the backlash, and then said it again without a flicker of hesitation. Because to Bauer, the reasoning is simple and damning. In his telling, she only ever thinks of herself, self-promotion, profit, and the endless polishing of her own image, with no concern for who gets flattened underneath her on the way there. A woman who, in his account, has behaved disgracefully and never once made amends, who used Harry as a vehicle, who used the royal family itself to seize exactly what she wanted and then discarded the rest. Harry does not escape his verdict either. Bauer describes a man with no real self-awareness and no self-criticism, surrounded by nobody willing to ask hard questions, living inside a self-fabricated bubble where the couple genuinely believe themselves to be victims. But in Bauer's telling, they are not the victims anymore. They are the perpetrators. He describes Harry as a man exposed, a man whose only commercial success has come from invading his own family's privacy, even as he spends millions in court-accusing newspapers of doing the same thing to him. A man who, in Bauer's brutal phrase, has committed reputational suicide. Then Bauer delivered the part that should genuinely make Meghan nervous. That entire narrative of her steering Harry, pulling his strings, marching him into open war with his own blood. Bauer says all of it is coming back around now. In his exact framing, she is about to get it back in spades. That is not a man idly guessing at a storyline. That is the author who has built entire books on this couple, telling you flatly what he believes is barreling toward her. Which raises the question that decides everything. After all of this, would she really dare show her face at Invictus again? Turns out, the people with the money answered first, and they answered without her. The great Exodus Boeing is gone. A presenting sponsor that loudly announced a long-term partnership back in 2023 has reportedly confirmed it will not touch the Birmingham 2027 games. Its contract ended, and it is not re-signing. When a giant like Boeing steps off the deck, everyone notices which way it is walking. One observer put it perfectly. It is like watching everyone flee a sinking ship. Then Australia's government walked away from a $9 million commitment and reportedly blindsided the organization doing it. Invictus officials reportedly found out minutes before the announcement went live. No warning, no courtesy call, just a public exit, timed so that nobody inside could soften the blow. The vice chairman of the Birmingham board resigned overnight, with no explanation offered, and to this day, none has been given. And here is the detail that tells you just how radioactive this name has become. Qualified professionals were reportedly turning down jobs the moment they heard the word Invictus attached. Not because of the money, not because of the role, because of the name itself. When people in the industry would rather walk away than have that charity on their resume, you are no longer looking at a public relations problem. You are looking at a reputation in freefall, one that the people closest to the organization can already smell. 15 months out, Birmingham reportedly has just 11 sponsors and around $4 million raised in a city that literally declared bankruptcy in 2023. Now somehow on the hook for games that could cost $45 million or more. Government funds are supposed to cover roughly half, but the rest is supposed to come from private companies and private individuals. And the private money is running in the opposite direction. The public mood has shifted underneath all of it too. In a time of real economic strain, people want to know exactly where their donations go, and there are plenty of organizations that fund prosthetics and build wheelchair ramps directly, which leaves Harry reportedly having to travel to Birmingham himself this summer to personally drum up business, not covered by insurance for shortfalls of this size, with the financial pressure landing squarely on him. And that, according to Bauer, is precisely the picture that answers the question we opened with. Forced away. Why is Meghan reportedly being kept away from Invictus? Because the stage she built her comeback on has collapsed into wreckage, and according to Bauer, she has no intention of being photographed standing in the middle of it. His phrase cuts to the bone. She does not want to be on the arm of a loser. Her entire brand was built on winning, on glowing, on floating serenely above it all. Appearing at Birmingham would mean standing beside a man Bauer describes as publicly exposed and drowning in bills, in front of a press corps that now knows every number you just heard. But it was not only her own calculation. The insiders resented her presence. Executives reportedly worried the games had become her personal show. Soldiers threatened to walk. Sponsors fled. The organization that once rolled out the red carpet now reportedly sees her name as part of the problem. The stage was taken down around her as much as she stepped away from it. Forced away, in other words, by the wreckage her own starring role reportedly helped create. And still, Bauer offers one final warning, and he could not be clearer. Never underestimate these two when they smell profit. He says the British public is sick to death of the Sussexes, absolutely sick of the sight of them. And in the same breath, he cautions that if they spot a way to profit from Birmingham, they will force their way in anyway. Because in his telling, it was never about loyalty, never about Harry, never even about the veterans. Just one cold, loveless question. Does showing up make money or cost it? 63 million vanished into 10 days. The wounded got 63% less, while the reserves swelled 430%. Boeing is gone, Australia is gone, the money is a redacted mystery. And the woman who once made this event her personal showcase is now reportedly being kept as far from it as possible. So, now I want to hear from you. Do you believe Meghan will stay away from Birmingham 2027, or will she force her way back onto that stage the moment there is money in it? Drop your answer in the comments below, because your take might be sharper than anything the experts are saying. And if you made it this far, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because this story is nowhere near finished, and when the next set of accounts drops, you are going to want to be here for it.